This is Business Edge. We move straight into our next conversation where Mozambican courts is handing out the verdict in a $2 billion corruption case. Now, it is expected to take 5 days for the judgment in Mozambique's biggest corruption scandal to be fully read out and delivered. The 19 high-profile defendants faced charges ranging from money laundering to bribery and blackmail related to a $2 billion hidden debt scandal that crashed the nation's economy. The 1,388-page judgment stems from a scandal that came after state-owned companies in Mozambique illicitly borrowed the money in 2013 and 2014 from international banks to buy a tuna fishing fleet and surveillance vessels. The government masked the loans from Parliament and the public. Now joining me is Fernando Lima. He's editor of one of Mozambique's leading weekly independent newspapers, Savana News. Fernando, welcome to Business Edge. Thank you so much for joining me today. Hello, Fernando. All right.
Hello?
So okay, fantastic.
Hello?
There we go. Fernando, I can hear you.
Yes, I can hear you too.
Okay, fantastic. So let's get started on this story. It's a very interesting one that has come to light for many of us now. But the case started in August last year and finally wrapped up in March, particularly for this $2 billion scandal. How was it uncovered? How was it found out, basically, that this was an illegal scheme, an illicit scheme to defraud the country and, of course, others who are involved?
Well, I think the press played a very important role on uncovering this scandal and uncovering these hidden debts, these secret deals related to these three companies. In fact, it was in March 2016 that Wall Street Journal, followed by Financial Times, for the first time raised this issue, quoting sources within IMF to quote that those debts were made without the consent of IMF and without the knowledge of Mozambican parliament. And that's how the scandal broke 6 years ago. On the first instance, the Mozambican government tried to not deal straightforward with the scandal, trying to say everything was under control. The parliament was not taking serious concerns into this scheme, but under pressure from international donor community and after IMF cut relations with Mozambique, the Mozambican government was forced to start looking seriously into this matter, arresting 24 of people involved in the scam, while the Minister of Finance was arrested in South Africa and is still in South Africa, waiting extradition either to United States or to Mozambique after being involved in this scandal.
Okay, so Fernando, you've mentioned the former Minister of Finance, that's Manuel Chang. He's the one who actually signed these issues, and he's going to either be extradited to the U.S. or back to Mozambique. But he's not the only high-profile defendant in this case. So take us through who some of them are and the role that they have played or allegedly played in this scandal.
Well, in order for this scam to function and in order for all these credits to be authorized, the people involved need the authorization from the president. And that's why two of the people involved contact the son of former President Yabusa in order to facilitate all the authorizations, all the agreements involving a Lebanese company based in Abu Dhabi in the Middle East. That's why the son of Mr. Armando Guebuza, former president of Mozambique, Ndambi Guebuza, is now seated on the court bench, as well as the head of security, the deputy head of security, the secretary of the former president, the political advisor of former president, and other people related to former administration in Mozambique. These are some of the people that are waiting to hear the sentences on them on the next couple of days.
Hear their fate. You talked about former president's son as well. It's clear that this is a crime that reached to the highest levels and corridors of Mozambique's government when Armando Guebuza was president. But the former president appeared as a witness, not as a defendant. And there are many people who are saying that he should actually have been charged as well. How possible do you think it is that the president was actually not involved or not aware that this scam was taking place?
Well, the possibility of the president not to be aware of the case, it's completely impossible. Mr. Guebuza has a very centralized management of power, management of government business, and so all these things could not happen without his knowledge. In fact, 3 years ago in New York, #2 guy of this Privinvest Lebanese company was on trial in New York, and he recount how the whole thing was handled by President Guebuza, and how President Guebuza indicate his son to handle the situation, and of course also his security branch. However, in the Mozambican trial, Mr. Guebuza was not on the bench on the fact that there's no paper signed by Mr. Guebuza, and even meetings that took place related to the projects and the creation of the 3 companies were not kind of convincing, saying that Mr. Guebuza was in charge of those meetings, planning the whole scam. So, in my view, there was a political arrangement in which the president was taken out of the group of people sent to trial, as well as Mr. Nyusi, that at the time was the Minister of Defense, also was taken out of the trial, and he had also heard for the process, but not someone that is on the trial.
Yes, and that was actually my next question, because we have heard, of course, that current President Filipe Nyusi has actually been implicated in several testimonies in this particular case. He was the Minister of Defense at the time when the 3 state-owned companies secretly borrowed $2 billion from international banks to finance the purchase of fishing vessels and military patrol boats. There are questions as to whether Nyusi will ever be asked to account for his role in this. But let's move beyond this. Now, this debt trial has publicized the extent to which corruption and political patronage seem to have undermined governance in Mozambique. Fernando, just how deeply entrenched are these particular issues for Mozambique?
Well, unfortunately, the country is now known for all these scandals. Not only this scandal, but other scandals. For example, the World Bank just canceled a provision to help our Department of Natural Disasters on mismanagement of funds disbursed by World Bank. So this is not a surprise for Mozambique, and this means that our institutions do not have proper checks and balances procedures in order to see how these things happen, how these things are authorized, and how these things are being implemented. In fact, that's why these were called secret debts, because everything has been committed in secret without any checking, any provision for the parliament to have a say on those provisions. And this is one of the problems, and one of the deep problems within Mozambican government, and it needs to be reversed. Why, despite the fact that the parliament was not involved, was also illegal. The parliament should have been involved, in fact, because it should be according to the law. The parliament should have a say. But the point is Frelimo, the ruling party, as the majority in parliament. And so basically the people implementing this project basically override parliament to go ahead with the project.
So, Fernando, that leads me to ask, have these loopholes been closed? Those are the loopholes that made this particular situation possible in 2013 and 2014. You're talking about those involved being able to override parliament. Has Mozambique found a way to close the loopholes so something like this does not happen again?
I hope so. And yes, there are now new laws in place trying to address these situations. But I think what is most important to legal issues and new laws in place, I think there should be a political commitment to not do things like that again, and these things would not happen again as business as usual. But for that, you need to have other elements in place, like a very active civil society in place. You need to have a very strong opposition to check government and government projects, and this is happening, but this is at a very slow pace. So I would not avoid the possibility that some other scandals to happen, because there's still very weak rules and institutions on these things in the country.
Fernando, we'll be wrapping up shortly, but I have to ask, the cost of this scandal was massive, and the consequences, as you can see on the screen, hopefully we'll get that back up, have been very dire for Mozambique. We had the World Bank and the IMF pulled out, and then, of course, unfortunately, the economy collapsed. The country defaulted on its loans, and the debt ratio grew to 113% compared to 54% before that. The currency was devalued, losing more than 30% of its value. So these are facts that we can put forward. But when it comes to the cost for the Mozambican people, what did this situation, this scandal, this scam at the highest levels of government cost Mozambican people?
Well, that's the point, and that's the most sad outcome in this scandal, because life for people became worse. The salaries devalued. The salaries didn't go along with the local currency devaluation, and so that's the people, in fact, that are suffering because of their salaries, because of unemployment, and because shortages and new pressures on the state budget, since the government is also paying part of the debt to the bonds created on one of the companies. And this means that less money for education, less money for the health sector, less money for projects for ordinary people in the country.
All right, Fernando Lima, thank you so much for joining me. We're following this, and it's expected that it will take about 5 days for the entire judgment of more than 1,300 pages to be read out. And a lot of people are waiting to see what the final verdicts say, and they'll use that to determine whether or not Mozambique is truly serious about fighting corruption. Fernando, thank you so much. And one of the issues that has been raised that my guest also noted is the fact that a former president whose son is one of the 19 defendants was actually not also charged. But there are a few things around that, because his signature was not found on any document, as well as now current president Felipe Nyusi also being implicated. And there are questions as to whether or not he will ever answer for his role in this case. Now, anti-corruption activists are saying that the sentences must be strong enough so that it is not annulled or significantly reduced in a second instance court. But some are predicting that the sentences would be politically rigged in the long run. This $2 billion hidden debt is one that has cost Mozambique severely. It said that some 2 million people were pushed into poverty because of this. And we also found a situation where a report says that all of the revenue that Mozambique is making from oil and gas for the next 10 years will go to servicing the debt that came about because of this situation. It's day 2 of the verdict reading. It's about 5 days said that it'll take. We'll be watching this closely to see what the final decisions are for the 19 defendants in this case. And that's it on this edition of Business Edge. You can follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can also head to our website, www.newscentral.africa, and download our mobile app. 12 p.m. West African time. News Central now comes your way with all the latest from here across the continent and beyond. I'm Tolulope Adeleru-Balogun. Have a fantastic day.